Before we get into ARFs, just to level set everyone on what R Drive is, but we're a suite of applications that aim to give everyone secure, decentralized, pay-as-you-go, censorship-resistant, permanent storage, right, for anyone, because we think anyone or everyone has data that might need that storage that lasts forever. And we think that R Drive can maybe help you guys out in your new communities in a couple different ways. So first is really just storing your data, right? And I'm calling that an ecosystem first way of storing and sharing your files. We're building on Arweave. It makes sense to store our data on Arweave, I think. So R Drive is a great way to do that. And then as well as the Arweave file system, or ARFs, which is really a way to tag the data and encrypt the data to hopefully build a more open and discoverable permaweb. We'll get into the details of that. But really, R Drive it's a file sharing app, so it's easy to just take an Arweave wallet, plug it in, and use it to really upload any kind of data to the permaweb. I know there's a lot of apps that are, looking at making nice photos or music apps, things like that. So all those kinds of applications need a way to get their data up to the permaweb. R Drive is an easy way to do that, whether it's a bunch of small files or really big files. I know the Chrome browser has its limits sometimes. That data, if it's private, you can encrypt it using our Arweave FS encryption schema. So that'll use your key, your Arweave wallet key, as well as a strong password that you define. And then R Drive is just great for just sharing things, whether it's PDFs, presentations, documents. A lot of the things I present now are things right from the permaweb itself. And I just think it looks good, right? If we're trying to show our permaweb applications, why not show data being served from the permaweb as well? And R Drive is just a really easy way to do that. But now, if you really want to take it a step further, you could look at introducing the Arweave file system into your application as well. And we saw this as kind of a necessity of really trying to deal with the immutable nature of Arweave. Obviously, you can't delete things. So when you are trying to synchronize files from a local file system where you can delete things, you need an easy way to kind of translate that data. So we put together a data model called Arweave file system, which does support those traditional file system operations like creating new files, folders, renaming them, moving them, updating them to different versions. And it does that by actually separating those files into what we call different entities to store that file system state on Arweave. And those entities actually have their data split between Arweave tags that you could surface through GraphQL, as well as a JSON file that we upload as part of the data in the transaction itself. And then we also separate the data model into private and public. At least as part of R Drive's mission, we want to give the user the most secure encryption possible, so we had to bake that into the file system as well. So it's really easy to distinguish between private data, private drives, folders, files, versus public. And we feel we've picked kind of the best-in-class encryption mechanism today. That's also included in our standard. Let's maybe just take a couple quick looks at what the tagging schema looks like. So here's just an example of a public drive, right? So that's kind of the root object. But you see here, there's going to be a few different transactions created. So the public drive is going to keep some of the basic drive metadata, like the version of Arweave file system or the actual ID, the privacy of the drive. And then, of course, the name and the root folder ID, because every drive also has what we call a root folder, which is essentially just a folder with no parent folder. And that also has the name to it. So every drive you create, you can use name to. Those drives can have subfolders and files. So we have a schema for a folder transaction. And that folder transaction has basic information about the folder identity, what drive it belongs to, the timestamp, as well as the folder name. And then we have our actual file transactions, and that's split between the file metadata and the file data itself. This is so we can allow things like renames and moves without having to re-upload the whole file. So if you moved a file from one subfolder to another, we just update the metadata as needed. And again, that metadata includes things like the file ID, its parent folder, the content type, and the timestamp, as well as information about the file that it's referencing, because those transactions are separated. So the metadata transaction has the file name and size, the file's actual data transaction and content type. And that's how we reference the actual file data. You see here for a private drive, the schema is mostly similar, but we do include some additional information around the cipher that we use, AES-256 GCM, as well as the initiation or initialization vector. That's what you need to decrypt any of this data. So what we've done in our standard, which if you'd like to read more about, please check it out on our GitHub. But we kind of defined this taxonomy as well as how you encrypt and decrypt this data. So really what we envision is people uploading their files through our drive and getting surfaced through any other application that uses the Arweave file system. And then conversely, if people are going to the PhotoBook app and uploading their photos there, if we're all sharing that same Arweave file system, you can easily download those photos into your R drive. So please check it out. Let us know what you think. We have lots of code as well if you want to see how we reference the file system. We've linked it all here, whether it's JavaScript or our Dart libraries. Feel free to take a look. Or you can help join us and build it together. We have lots of positions open. We talked about this last week, but I just wanted to put it out there as well. And then finally, if you wanted to talk about the file system, see improvements or having issues integrating it, just join our Discord, and we'd love to talk to you guys and see what other cool ideas you may be doing with it. And that's it for now.